All right, so I think I learned enough about MongoDB and Mongoose to go ahead and make a video about what I learned so far. So the basic things that we're talking about is just how to use SQL and the difference between SQL databases and NoSQL databases. So a SQL database would be something like SQL Developer, so like Oracle 12c, and it uses a table-based approach where we create tables. We can read our tables with the describe, and then we can update our tables with alter, and then we can delete our tables with drop, if I can find it, with drop. And CRUD is like the basics to all databases that you're using. From what I understand, you want to understand the CRUD operations when you're first learning a new database. And since I already did SQL Developer in school, it was kind of easy to understand how it all worked. So I want to explain MongoDB in relation to Oracle 12c, and those are just the two databases that I kind of have an idea what's going on with. So we'll just go to some of the documentation and we'll just start with understanding node exports. Nope. CRUD. So with MongoDB, the CRUD operations work they're not too complicated. So if we go here, we basically just said we want to find our database products. So another thing I can do here is to make this bigger. So we're saying databases.products. So first of all, I want to show that we have some databases. So we have a few databases. We have the fruits, we have local, and we have the shop database. So the shop database is what we are going to be using. So we can go ahead and say use the shop database. So we're already on it. And then we can say database.find. Oh no, that's not what we wanted to do. Okay, I kind of messed this up here, didn't I? Okay, we can just rerun. So we're just going to use shop db. And then we're going to say database.find. And okay, so we have to say shop db db.find. So we're gonna get, is not a function. Hold on. db.products. Oh, because we're trying to, okay. So I should probably explain that too. So inside of database, we have something called a cluster. And a cluster is basically like a table in MongoDB. So if we go here, our clusters is called products, and that's where all of our products are going to be contained. It's almost like going here and saying our database is the myHCC database, but the clusters would be like the tables. So if I was doing this in MongoDB, the criminals would be a cluster. And basically that's that. And now we can go ahead and say db.products.find. So now we're going to find our cluster called products. So products, you can just think of it like a table. And then we have our first one, which is pen, pencil, rubber. And then you can think of this as like the insert values. So if we select all from crimes, oh man, I'm going to have to put in my password. But if we were to select all from, let's say, criminals, it's going to basically give us a list of all the criminals. So if we were doing MongoDB, it'd almost be like doing criminals dot find. And then we would be able to find the list of all of the criminals. So that's kind of the difference between the clusters in MongoDB and the tables in SQL. So another thing we went over was reading and then updating and then deleting. So we'll go over that. So to go ahead, I don't know if I explained how to insert things. I didn't. So let's say we wanted to insert. So if we were using MongoDB or if we were using SQL, to do that, we would just use if I can find it here, we can use the insert into. So insert into allows us to insert into whichever table, so crimes, and then we could set our crime ID, criminal ID, classification, date charge, status, and then the values are next, and basically they match up with each other. So 100 is crimes ID, 1010 is a criminal ID, etc., etc. But let's say we want to put something into our products database. To do that, we can go ahead and use the database.products.insert1, and then it'll go into an object literal where the ID would be something that we haven't used yet. Let's say 5, and then the name is going to say, we'll just say desk mat. And then next is the price, and the price would be, let's say, $25.99. And then we can do reviews. So reviews is basically going to be kind of like a one-to-many relationship. So basically what this means is that one product can have many reviews, right? So this ID of 4 ashwagandha has 2 reviews. So this is a one-to-many relationship, but also it's a one-to-many relationship because I guess Nelson would be able to write more than one review. I don't know if there's a way to stop that because that doesn't really seem like it should be able to happen. But I think with MongoDB, you would be able to write more than one review. So our reviews would go inside of an array in an object, and then we can go ahead and say author name. We'll say John. And then we can go ahead and say the rating. Let's say he gave it an 8. And then let's say his review is very high quality. So now if we go ahead and we insert, we see that we get a true statement and then we get inserted ID 5. So if we say products.find, we see that we have the ID of 5 with desk mat added. We have the price, but I don't think we included the stock, and that's fine for this example. And Mongoose has a way to actually prevent that from happening, and I'll explain that later. So that is how we go ahead and we insert. So if we wanted to go to the next operation, so reading, that would be the database.find. That's how we read. So our update, let's see if I went over my updates. Reading queries .find, and then we have our update. So our update would just be the update 1, and it has a lot of different things we can do. So let's say database.products.update1, and then we can go ahead and update one of these things. So I think I updated the ID of 1. So I'm choosing which one I want to update. I want to update the ID of 5. And then what do I want to update on here? So I didn't add a stock, and I almost want to see if I can go ahead and add a stock after the fact. So if I want to say stock 12 and go ahead and run this, we got an error. Let's see, unexpected token. Okay, let's try to do that again. Products dot update 1. So we have our, okay, that's what I did wrong, I believe. Yeah, that's what I did wrong. So we need to say our ID is 5, and then I accidentally wrapped it all into parentheses, and we want to go ahead and set our stock to 12. So we should be able to run this now. And this does not go into array literal syntax. It goes into object literal syntax. So we can go ahead and do that. And this should work just fine. Set, yeah, this should work just fine. So now we went ahead and we updated our products. So we can say find, and we went ahead and we added a stock to the ID of 5. And that's the thing that we kind of forgot last time. So to update in SQL, it would just be the alter command. And I'm not going to explain that too much because I would just be here for a while. But we can use the alter command in SQL to do a lot of different things. So we can add constraints and so on and so forth. Actually, now thinking about it, alter table is probably to add constraints. I'm not sure if I have an example to update tables in SQL in here. So insert into, I guess this is an update. So we can update some of the values. So we're updating a criminals table and we're setting the male flag to N. So I'm not going to explain it because I'd have to then explain how the database works. Okay, moving on. So, and then to delete, we can go ahead and delete a product by saying database products and delete one. So we can say database dot products dot, and then I think it was delete one. And then we could go ahead and delete something by its name. So, or ID, but we'll just say name. And then, oh man, come on. Name. And then we can go ahead and delete desk mat. And we'll just say acknowledge true, deleted count 1. So now if we say db.products.find, we'll see that we no longer have a desk mat because it had the ID of 5. And now we only have the 3, 2, 4, and 1. So this is equivalent, I guess, to dropping a table in SQL. So if we go to project 2 here, we dropped 3 tables before we ran the rest of this SQL code. Okay, so I think we can move on now. So moving on to, I don't know why I keep doing that. So update, delete, relationships. I kind of explained that with the one-to-many with the reviews. And so one person can write, or one product can have many reviews, and then one person can write many reviews, but there's actually a way to kind of stop that in Mongoose because that doesn't really seem like that should be the case. So we can go ahead and do the native driver. So the native driver was like not fun at all to do. I'm really glad that we were able to switch over to Mongoose because that was not fun. So now I can kind of explain Mongoose. So basically to set up the connection to Mongoose, we'd have to npm install Mongoose, and then we can require Mongoose and connect our URIs. So I think this has some of my passwords in it, but I'll probably delete that by the time this goes up. So we can go ahead and connect to our Mongoose, and we do this with the async function, connect, and then we try to await the Mongoose connect, and we pass in the URI that we get from our Mongoose. So if we go to our server, that's where we get it. And then we console.log connected to Mongoose when this works. And then we'll catch an error that's basically going to give us an error in case anything happens. And then we run connect under here. So this is awaiting the connection. This is an async function. I'm not going to explain that, but yeah. And then we can basically, well, I just have app.get so that when we go ahead and run node app.js, we're connecting to local server host 3000. And then I'll now explain schemas. So creating schemas is basically like creating the boilerplate for a table. So the user schema, and I'll explain it in the new app.js. The user schema is going to be a new Mongoose schema, which is going to set out how our tables should be written. So we have our name here, which is an object, and the type is going to be a string. And this is required. So when we're doing our user schema and doing a new user, the name is going to be required. And if we don't include the name, it's going to yell at you and say, what is your name? So the username schema is going to be a string, and then the level is going to be a number. it's going to be required. And if you don't put it, it's going to say why no level. The minimum level is going to be 1. And then anything lower than that is going to say level too low. The max level is going to be 999. So now we can make a model, and the model is basically going to take the schema and it's going to insert user and go ahead and insert the user schema so that when we create the new table, we have to follow these rules. So now we have our user and we have a new user. So let's say we make a user without a name. When we try to save it, we're going to get an error. And it's going to say user validation failed. And the reason why it failed is because it's screaming at me and saying, what is your name? So we can add the name back in. And we can say the name is John. So what if I say the level is 0? We're also going to get yelled at because when we run node app.js, it's going to say user validation failed, and it's going to say the level is now too low. So let's say our level is 999. Let's say the name is Joe. And then let's say the username is Joe123. When we go ahead and run the node app.js, it's going to say, first of all, it's listening on port 3000. Second of all, the await function worked, and now we're connected to MongoDB. And then our user should now be added to our data. So if we go to users, we should now have Joe in here when we refresh. So is there a way to refresh in here? I'm not sure. So when we refresh, we see that we get Joe added in here. And we could even edit and delete these inside of MongoDB, which is really cool, or Atlas. But we see that it's added in here. And then we see that to obtain the data, we can use the find method with the then catch. And then I added the finally method to go ahead and close the connection after we do all of these things. So this is basically saying find all of the users. And then when you find all of the users, I want to run the for each method on here. So each one of the objects, and I can do this like this to better represent this. Node app.js. And basically these users, each one of these users is going to be an object. And then we want to console.log the user.name. So we want to basically take the name from each user and console.log it. So now we're getting all the names. And then we get Joe, Thomas, Paul, Samuel, and John. And then we want to catch any errors. So if anything goes wrong, we're going to catch the error. And then finally, the Mongoose connection is going to close. And then it's going to say console.log. Mongoose default connection closed, and then we'll catch any errors. So this is supposed to end the server, but it hasn't been doing that, which is really weird. And this is just our port, and it's basically saying just listening on localhost. So I have a lot of examples here of where I created different schemas, and this is the schema at its most basic usage. Without any objects telling us if anything is required or anything like that. And then this is just me creating some more models, just testing it out. And then this is adding in new fruits. And then we save our fruits, basically meaning just adding it to the database. And we can insert many things at one time. So I have 3 users right here. I have Samuel, Paul, and Thomas. And if I say insert many and put them in an array, it'll insert more than one. So I don't have it here because they're already added. But I think that's how I added these 3 with the insert many method. And I think that's pretty much it for Mongoose, or the basic explanation at least. Data validation, we went over that. So reading your database with Mongoose, we went over that. I think that's pretty much it for Mongoose and MongoDB. And I tried to make some comparisons to how these things would work in a table-based approach. My explanation probably wasn't great, but it is very early in the morning and I'm tired. But that's basically it. When I do my project, I might do it live, I might not, who knows, but yeah, that's it. MongoDB, pretty good. Mongoose, pretty amazing. I'm really glad that I live in a time where I don't have to do it with the Node.js driver, but that's pretty much it.